Welcome to week 8. I think it's fair to say now we're nearing the end. As a matter of fact, this week I am going to have you submit an outline or a rough draft for the essay. So it's time to start figuring that part out. And obviously I'll get some comments on all those back to you, but that'll be due the last week. The essay will be due the last week. That's kind of the one big assignment. The rest of the class, as you can tell, has been just a regular rhythm pretty much, right? All right, so what's happened on the discussion board? There were a few posts that I thought were pretty interesting, so I'll start with some of those individual ones. In general discussion of, is it possible to have eudaimonia without virtue? Aristotle thought no, right? It's a tricky conversation because if you try to go about it in the way some of you did, where basically like unless you have these virtues you're never going to be successful. I'm not really sure if that's actually true. It seems like there are successful people who lack a lot of virtues anyway. But one of the maybe better defenses of that idea I saw in there was Angela said that with virtue you have deeper satisfaction. Maybe that's right. You don't really ever feel satisfied in your accomplishments unless you have virtue to go along with it. I think Aristotle just thought it was a basic fact that we would all just find obvious, that if you weren't a virtuous person, then it doesn't really matter what else you accomplish in your life. But all right, another interesting. Several of you want to talk about Batman, of course. That's a fun one. So some good comments on that. Daniel said that if Batman kills the Joker, then like who's to say it stops there? And so that's an interesting way to look at it. I think that's kind of a good way of expressing the intuition behind rule theories. It's just as soon as we start making exceptions, then, is all of morality out the window, basically, is all that's left of like just practical reasoning. I think that is one way of kind of feeling the intuition behind rule theory. Or, Brenda said something kind of, I think, maybe expressing something similar. It would just kill the whole vibe of the movie if he was a murderer, right? Of course, I'm not really sure if it'd be accurate to say that Batman's a murderer if he killed the Joker. I don't know. Murder is a specific kind of killing, and you'd have to figure out, would this be that kind of killing or not? But, yeah, I mean, you saw last week about all the problems of consequentialism on the other side. But it is hard. It does feel like there should be some exceptions, right? So this is why we have terms instead like prima facie duties. That just basically means in general, in a normal situation, you shouldn't do X. You have a moral duty not to do X. But maybe, to save 1 million people, it's okay. That actually I think is a pretty common view of how morality works. But that's not how Batman thinks it works. So I don't know. Also, a whole lot of you want to talk about basically the idea, if God didn't create morality, then would it exist, right? And reminding you again, this is not the same conversation as if you don't believe God exists, then can you be moral? That's a different question, right? This is foundations of morality kind of thing. Yeah, but specifically focusing in on not just where does it come from, but also like why be moral, right? Yeah, I guess I'm not going to go through all the different directions that took on the discussion board, but I guess one way of thinking about it as far as if God doesn't exist, then there would be no reason, would be basically say, what is a rule if there is no rule maker, right? If we just create them ourselves, or if it just came from what's programmed in us by evolution, so what? Feels like a poignant response. But there are a variety of naturalistic views would be one category, one way of trying to solve the problem. A naturalistic view is going to try to reduce morality to something in the realm of science, right? So utilitarianism is supposed to be a naturalistic view. Morality reduces to pain and pleasure. There also are some views along lines of just morality just is, period. And then it would roughly go in the same category as math, right? 1 + 1 = 2 is not physically located anywhere. No one created it either. It just is, right? So that is another way of trying to argue that morality can exist without God creating it, because you could argue anyway that God didn't create the fact that 1 + 1 = 2. So there are a variety of attempts, but yeah, I'm not gonna settle that right now. Just kind of giving you an idea of ways that can go. Anyway, that's it for this walking video, and let's finish strong.